All right, I didn't get it much further on the to-do app, so we are just going to continue ahead on React. All right, so I don't want to sit and
Mr.
read
Scott,
this. Go ahead.
real quick, since you said you didn't get very far, do you want us just to turn in what I have?
No, don't worry. Don't worry about turning it in.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Once I get it to work, I'm going to share my code with everybody, and then we'll have a date for when you should turn it in.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I should have time to look at it this weekend. All right. So I don't want to get into this, and I got to watch what I say, not because I don't trust any of you guys, but let's just say that I'm spending a lot of time with certain students in the other class, and I'm talking hours. I'm not talking minutes. All right. And it's been taking a lot more of my time than I thought it would. I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay. So today, as it says, we will continue to work with React, including building our first React app. We're going to start on that in just a bit. And the way that I've decided to do this, and I'm not going to say this is good or bad or whatever, but I'm going to give you an assignment that's going to have 3 parts to it. And right now we're going to look at part number 1. I want you to go and create an application for me, and I want you to do it more or less the way that you would have done it back in the day when when we were in the AWD1111 class. And it doesn't matter if you had me or you had Mr. Gudmested. It doesn't matter. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this up here now. I will email it to all of you in just a bit. All right. But this is what I want you to do. And you may have even done this already, and that's fine, but you probably didn't do everything that was in here. All right. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to actually run it for you in just a moment. So I want you to create, a JavaScript and HTML calculator, BMI calculator. The reason I want you to do this is I'm going to give you about an hour to work on this, and I'll ask after a half an hour. If you got it done, great, then we'll just start up right away. But after we create this, or after you create this in JavaScript, we're going to go back and we're going to create the same thing using React. Again, this is the decision I've made as far as how to show you this stuff. So there'll be a way that we'll be able to, kind of compare and contrast what we're doing. So as it says there, and I don't want to sit and read it to you, but you'll have 2 files. You'll have your typical index.html file. This should be set up like a real project. So in other words, you should have an index, have a folder, and in that folder will be an index.html file. In that folder should be a JS folder, and inside there, I just called mine BMI.js. It doesn't matter what you call it. And also have an images folder. All right. Go out to the, I'll show you exactly what I did in just a moment. But go out then to Google Images and find yourself somebody who's underweight, optimal weight, overweight, and obese, and bring in their images into the image folder. Now, make sure that it works. So in other words, if you come in here and you put in a height that's out of range, it should give you a message and not go any further. If you come in and you put in a weight that's out of range, it should give you an error message and not go any further. If you put in a height and a weight that are both within range, it should come up with something like this. So height and weight are valid, your BMI is, put in the BMI, put in your status.
Scott,
yes.
Are you supposed to be sharing your screen?
I thought I was. So I'll start it all over again, not a problem. All right. So let me go back to the start here. All right. So can you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Okay. So you're going to create a JavaScript BMI calculator. It'll set it up like you would set up anything back in the AWD1000 days. In other words, have a folder, call it something like BMI JavaScript or something like that. All right. And in there, you'll have your index.html. You will have a folder called JS. And I created in my JS folder a file called BMI.js. If you'd rather call it script.js or whatever, your call, doesn't matter. Also have an images folder. Go out to Google Images and find pictures of somebody who's underweight, somebody who's optimal weight, somebody who's overweight, and somebody who's obese. I used basically not cartoons, but just images, not real people. You can use real people. You can do it any way you want to. All right. So you are to set up constants. So the minimum height you should allow is 12 inches. The maximum is 96, which would be 8 feet. The minimum weight would be a pound and the maximum weight would be 777. All right. You can set up other constants if you want to. I did. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some time to work on this. And then I'm going to show you exactly what I did. And you don't have to do it exactly the way I did it. You don't have to. The reason I'm going to show you, though, what I did is I'm going to use that as a template or kind of a baseline for going back and doing this same thing inside of React. All right. So if the user enters a height or a weight that's out of range or leaves it blank or whatever, display a message near the bottom of the screen that shows them what their error is. All right. This shouldn't be here because setting the focus is a pain in the butt so just pretend that isn't there. That's on me. But clear the screen after 3 seconds. I'm going to show you all this in just a second. If everything is valid, figure out the BMI, and there's the formula. There's different ways this can be done. Then figure out their status. If they had a BMI that was less than 18.5, all right, if they had one less than 18.5, they're underweight. If it's greater than or equal to 18.5, but under 25, they're optimal weight. If it's greater than or equal to 25 and less than 30, they're overweight rather. And if it's greater than 30, they're obese. All right. As shown in the program run, print out all the information and the associated image. Have the image disappear after 3 seconds. All right. And all the output disappear after the button is clicked. I'm going to show you it in just a minute. It says I'm going to give you an hour to work on this. All right. And at 1 o'clock, I'm going to show you exactly what I did. Then we're going to talk a little bit about React, but I don't want to talk too much. I want to do. So you are to add your own touches to both these apps, and you'll understand that in class. All right. Especially with the second one, my React app has there's no CSS that I put in it at all. It looks like that. So the JavaScript part of this will be worth 20 points. The React part will be worth 30 points. And I'm hoping you can get this done by Sunday. As it says, we'll continue this pattern of looking at something in JavaScript, then redoing it in React tomorrow and Thursday. And then Friday, will be our regular lab day. So when you run this, if you put in a height that's out of weight, then you should get a message about the height being out of weight, or out of range rather. If you put in a weight that's out of range, you should get a message as well. If you put in a height that's within range and a weight that's within range, and you click the submit button, you should get something along these lines. Height and weight valid, your BMI is, then put the BMI, then put your status, then your image, etc. So that's what I'm looking for. And to show you this, so let me just show you mine. I'll actually run it a couple times just so you can see it. So here's mine right here. And when I bring it up, like I said, I don't really have any CSS in here. Okay. I use some line breaks. I didn't even use margin. I didn't use padding. Why? Because I want you to be doing this stuff, because part of the ability of being a full stack web developer is not only being able to program on the back end, which is what we've been doing a lot of lately, but also being able to program on the front end. So if I put nothing in here, you can see I get my height inputted out of range. In the same way, if I put in 11 and notice 1, 2, 3, come on, disappear. It disappears. If I put in 97, 1001, 1002, 1003, there you go. So if I put in a height that's valid and I leave the weight off, I get the weight message, which will disappear in 3 seconds. All right. And I had everything clear off. But again, if I put in here and I put in a weight that's less than the minimum, or I put in a weight that's greater than the maximum, you can see what's happening. All right, that's enough of that testing. But if I come in here and I put in 72 and I say the person is 6 feet and weighs 100 pounds, it should show that they're underweight. And that's what I've got here. And then it disappeared. If I say 72, and you don't have to make it 3 seconds, you can make it 5 if that wasn't long enough. All right. So if I say that they're 166 pounds, then notice they're of optimal weight. All right. If I say 72 and they weigh 200 pounds, now they're overweight. And then finally, if I say 72 and I make them 333 pounds, that makes them obese. You don't have to use my pictures. You don't have to worry right now about prettying it up. But one thing that you might want to do is, for example, you might just want to display flex or use Flexbox and take everything that's in here and the output and center it just because it would look nicer. All right. I'm not doing any of that because I want you to do what you want to do. All right. So I'm going to email this to you right now. That's got all of the instructions on it. I'm going to email that to you right now. And I'm going to give you 45 minutes because it's about 12:20 to get a break in. And then I'm going to show you exactly what I did. I'm not going to spend much time on that. I'll spend about 10 minutes or so. And then we're going to jump right into talking about React. All right. So let me send this to you. I will send it to you right now. I'm going to leave this up on the screen. I am going to go in because I'm still I'm tweaking the example that I did in React. All right. And you will see it in just a bit, but I like it to be as decent as possible. And right now it could be a lot better than it is. All right. So I'm going to come into here. Whoops, not into there. That was this morning. I'm going to come into here and I'm just going to stop sharing and I'm going to change my window so that you can actually see this React assignment. You should see that on your screen right now, but I'm also going to go in and that should still be on your screen even right now. It should still be on your screen, but I'm going to come in here and I'm going to email this document to each and every one of you. Do you both understand what I'm asking you to do by 5 after 1?
Not for sure. So you want us to start on this, right?
I want you to get as much of this done. So before I show you my logic, it's, for lack of better words, it's kind of a test for you. And when I say it's kind of a test, all right, even though it's a test, you're not turning it in like a test, but I want you to be able to say, yeah, I know how to do this. Yeah, I know how to do this. Because again, I want to show you there'll be some marked differences between the way we do this here and the way that we will do it when we get into React. All right. So yeah, I'm asking you to at least get a start on building this right now. And that way too, by 5 after 1, I'm gonna shoot for trying to do it in about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to show you what I did. I'll go over every line of code, but quickly. And then we're going to start rewriting this in React. So again, I'm going to take this, all right, and hopefully you can still see on your screen right now the document, but I'm going to send it right now to each and every one of you. All right. So you will all get it literally in about 2 or 3 minutes. So yeah, work on this. All right. And I'm going to say this one last time. This is not for either of you. Just so you know, this is not for either of you, but the rest of you. Some people are behind. I'm not giving you any more time, but some people are behind in here. If you are behind, would you please at least email me and let me know that you're behind and when you plan on getting stuff finished? All right. Because not you two, but at least a couple of the other people in here, this class are behind. All right. And, like I said, you have to catch up, especially, and I don't think it's either of the people who are going to, I don't believe it's either of the people who are going to graduate in December. But if you are behind, so if you're an assignment or whatever behind, you don't want to do this. If you're planning on graduating in December, you don't want to be behind where you take any kind of chance of, falling behind or failing the class. All right. So with that said, do you now understand what I'm asking you to do? And either one or both of you just say yes or no.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so let me grab this. Where is it? React assignment 1, part 1. I think this is it. Yes. All right. So it has now, not yet. Doggone it, Jeffrey. Let me do this. All right. So you should have it right now. All right. And I'm going to leave. Do you see on your screen right now the same
Yeah.
thing I just sent you?
I see the assignment on your screen. I have not got it yet.
Okay, but you should be getting it literally in a matter of seconds. If for some reason, I'm going to stay on here, and if for some reason, you something happens where you don't see it or whatever,
Yep,
it doesn't
I
come,
got
you
it.
just let me know. Okay. You both have it then? John, do you have it too? Or was that you? I think that was you,
No,
Clayton, right?
I have it.
Okay, you both have it. All right. So I'm going to be online here, but I will come back to talk with you guys in literally about 40 minutes. Talk to you then.
We join the Waste Department.
All right, I'm going to just quickly get a drink and I'll be right back and we can start up. No. All right, I'm going to start back up. Hope you guys are both here and listening. So if you do want to view what I did, you'll be able to do so. So let me go back and change this so that I'll stop sharing and I'll share my screen. All right. And let's see, this is the React one. So okay, so this is how I did it. And I'm not claiming that this is the best way or anything else. I literally just went in and did the exclamation point tab to get all this stuff. Okay, I changed the title to BMI program in JavaScript, and when we create the other one, it's going to be BMI program in React. Now, I think I've talked to you about this already, and if I haven't, probably Mr. Gudmiston has. But in the olden days, like up until a few years ago, you would always take your script line for your JavaScript and you would put it at the bottom. Typically, you'd put it right before your ending body tag. All right, almost always that's where it would go. But now if you put it up in your head section and you use the word defer there, it does basically the same thing. All right, you can see that the word is in red. It's interesting because when I taught this class about a year ago or so, not this class, but when I taught the AWD1111 class, I guess it was last year when I had defer in there, it wasn't red. Okay, so just set up an H2. It says BMI calculator. And then I set up, I really should have put this in a form. I thought about that later, but I didn't. I could just surround the whole thing with form tags. Should be able to even do that right now. I don't think it'll hurt. It's not going anywhere. So really and truly shouldn't matter, I wouldn't think. So all right. And I've got my label in there for my height, and I've got my thing for the height. You should by now, it should be kind of automatic to you to just make them type number. And weights, these two are the same, except one's an H and one's a W, but other than that, they're identical. All right, and there's different ways you can do this. And I think you know this, but I just set up for on clicks. So I said with the submit button, I'm going to call a routine that I called validate all inputs. And for the clear button, I'm going to do a clear screen. All right, and this will be my output area. I'm actually outputting it in 4 different areas. This will either have an error message or it'll say that all the checks passed. This, as it says, will have the BMI. This will have the status, so either underweight, optimal weight, overweight, or obese, and this will have the corresponding image. Okay, any questions on that? If I hear nothing, I'm just going to go on. All right, so here's the JavaScript. And again, as I said, when I wrote it, I tried to really follow the instructions, and I at least attempted to in here, attempted to go in and, well, like I said, follow the instructions and just really modularize, for lack of better words. So I've got the minimum height, the maximum height, the minimum weight, and the maximum weight. Nothing big there. These are our constants, which meant if you were 18.5 exactly, you'd be optimal. So the minimum that you can be for optimal is 18.5. If you were 25.0 or above, between 25.0 but less than 30, you're overweight. And if you were 30 or above, you're obese. So that's why I use those constants right there. I also wrote some string constants. Again, you didn't have to do this, but I just thought it made it a little easier to work with. Then I've got an error for the height. I've got an error for the weight. And I've got this thing, if everything does validate. All right, it says the height and the weight are valid. It's interesting. I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but it's either a setting that I have that if I set it, I didn't know that, or it's something fairly new. I don't know. But I'd written this like regular JavaScript. I wrote it out first and I put semicolons in there, but notice that they were all removed by Visual Studio Code. All right, so this was I don't know why that's there. This was my validate all inputs. So I basically started by saying grab whatever is in the text box for height, and that becomes height. Grab whatever is in the text box for weight, and that becomes weight. This will be my status a little bit later. And I did it kind of the way I have been as far as the keep going type of thing. So I said first validate the height. If that comes back positive, then validate the weight. All right. If that doesn't come back positive, I said this clear screen, which is just going to clear everything out in 3 seconds. That was one of the things that I was hoping that you would put in there, is the fact that it's a set timeout, and really the easiest way to write that is through the use of an arrow function like we've been doing. So we validate the height. If it works, we validate the weight. If that works, well, now we got a valid height and we got a valid weight. So I just said BMI equals calculate BMI, passing in the height and the weight, and then status equal calculate BMI status, passing in the BMI, and then display outputs. I wanted to display the BMI and the BMI status. Again, if for some reason the weight didn't come back valid, I'm again going to just tell it to clear the screen. All right. So nothing major here. These are things that you've seen before. All right. Function validate height. I again made sure that height was set. And I've got this variable that I called retval that I set equal to true. And actually there should have been a let in here, just for, because it's cleaner to do it that way. All right. So let it equal true. If the height was out of range, meaning it was, so this is a range check. It wanted to make sure it was between 12 and 96. If it's not, all right, it wrote that error message down below and it set my return value to false. All right. And then we return retval, or our return value. Weight is virtually the same thing. All right. Except what we're checking in here is not 12 to 96, rather it is 1 to 777. So if it's out of range, again, we're going to put the weight message where previously we put the height message. All right. We again set our retval to false and we return our retval. The calculate BMI is about as simple as it gets. There's 2 ways you can do this. I could have just come in here and said height times height, which would have been totally fine. but since there is a power function, all right, and you also, that was the other reason I brought this up, you may or may not be aware of this, but now you can also write this. You can write H2 like that. And that actually is a holdover from visualbasic.net. That's the explanation operator. Maybe that's percent. I think I'm saying it right. That you used in Visual Basic, and they brought that over in one of the later versions of JavaScript. All right, I just like it. I'm just used to doing it like that. I know that works. So here's was our status. Again, nothing surprising there. I use the constants. So the first one says if it's less than 18.5, you're underweight. The second one says if it's less than 25, you're optimal weight. The next one says if it's less than 30, you're overweight. And the final one says if you're 30 or more, you're obese. Okay, so again, nothing really surprising, I don't think, there. And then we just displayed the outputs. Now, when I first wrote it, I was having some problems and it was on me. So I put these in there, these alerts in there, and I usually, not always, but usually I use alerts just for testing purposes. I did put a couple of alerts in for the when we go in and start writing this in React in a few minutes. Just so you know, I did put those in there. All right, a couple of alerts, and you'll see why when we get to that point. This would say, if everything came out, this valid inputs just says that from up here, it says height and weight valid, your BMI is. So that's what we've got there. Then the BMI, and if you hadn't figured that out already, that when you run it, unless you're really lucky, it sometimes goes to 7 or 8 decimal places. So I did a 2 fixed on it. And finally, I did the status. So if everything worked, it's going to say that, everything was valid. And let's say your BMI is 27. It would say, BMI 27.00 and then the status, which would probably in that case be overweight. Then to figure out which of these images to use, and I couldn't remember how to do this, to be honest with you. All right. And I guessed that I was close, but I Googled it. So we went back and the image for each one of these, we wanted to set differently, either underweight. In fact, when I first created those, I put these all in uppercase. I don't know why I did that, but I did. So, I mean, it works whether it's case insensitive, but all that stuff is in there. Default, I just wrote down no image available. I could have probably had some kind of a default image, but I didn't put anything. Finally, when it was all done, I again told it to clear after 3 seconds. And again, if that's not enough time, just change it from 3,000 milliseconds to 5,000 or something like that. And this, hopefully you knew this, or it's probably something that Mr. Goodmisted ran by you, but that clears the screen. All right, so basically it's more or less like having a reset button. All right, pretty much is the same thing. So that was it. And my question for you is, are there any questions on what I just showed you? Anything you need to see again or anything you don't understand? Because if there isn't, we're just going to go on. All right, then let's go on. Now, this is the way that the React one is going to look, just so you know, not very pretty, but if I come through here and type in 72 and 100, which means the person better be underweight. All right, there's the BMI, there's the underweight, and there's the picture. So we're going to get that. I'm not putting any formatting in here whatsoever. I want you to do that. All right. Okay, so I wanted to just say a couple things about this. All right. Now, you may have come to class yesterday and been a little bit miffed because I asked you to go through that React tutorial. All right. And I've gone through it. I wrote the code. The first time I went through it, I'm not going to lie to you, I copied everything. Then I went back in and I wrote the code. All right. I didn't copy it just to try to learn something from it. Now, I don't want to read to you, but I do want to mention a couple of things that are in here. All right. And it's amazing because virtually every single publication that you read, when they come in and they ask you why you should use React, virtually all of them that I've seen is, well, one reason is React is super easy to learn. Now, I don't know, because you guys were both fortunate enough to have Mr. Gudmested for your AWD1111 teacher. So you have a little bit of React experience. So you might agree with that. You might not agree with that, is what I'm saying. All right. Everything that we end up creating in here, they're all going to be components. And when you look at this page right here, just grabbing this page, I'm just going to grab what's on the screen right here. All right. There's a component right here. This component has another component there and another component there and one there and one there and one here, etc. So virtually everything that you end up creating in React are components. And the nice thing about this is React allows you to nest components within components. All right. And you maybe have seen, I'm not going to look for it or anything else right now, but virtually every company of any size is using React in one format or another. But let's just talk for a second about what React actually is. All right, you probably know this already, but it was developed by Facebook. It's an open source Java library that's designed to make it easier for you to create user interfaces. All right. So what we're going to do as we, basically finish up the R part of MERN, we've done MEN so far. We've gone through Mongo, we've gone through Express, we've gone through Node. All right. We've done little to nothing before today, basically nothing with React. All right. So it's used for building UIs or user interfaces. Unlike something like Node, basically React has nothing to do with routing. React has nothing to do with making HTTP requests. So when you think about it, when you sit and think about the MVC or the model view architecture type of or the MVC architecture that we've been talking about, all right, we've worked, the model is what we used Mongo for, all right, and the view, we just kind of wrote some stuff in regular HTML, okay, or EJS, etc. And the controller we used Node for. Well, now the view part, the view layer of our MVC architecture is going to be replaced, and it's going to be created using React. All right. One of the biggest advantages of using React, and again, since you guys have been exposed to this, but not everybody has, you probably already know this. You can change data and you can make changes. So you can make changes without having to do anything. Your screen basically automatically refreshes. All right. And one more thing that I wanted to mention to you, by default, and my definition of saying by default means unless told otherwise. So by default, React tries to run on port 3000. Now, what if you've already got something running on port 3000? All right, did I keep this up here? I wasn't that smart, so let me see if I've got it here. There it is. I don't know if you know this command or not. It's npx space kill minus port space and then a port number. What that will do is, if you've got something running on a port, it doesn't matter what port that is, whatever number you put in there, it'll kill the running process. So for instance, if you had React running already and then you decided to build another React and you never shut down the first one, I mean, sometimes just sitting there and closing it, you're still going to get a message that it's running because it still thinks that it is. But if you put in this command, the npx kill minus port with the port number, it'll always kill any process, any running processes. All right, so again, we mentioned that React was created and it was maintained by Facebook. And again, if I say this to you guys sorry if I'm boring you, or if it's, maybe it's just some review, but what we're going to be working on a lot in the next few weeks is something called JSX. And depending on the book you read, some of them call it JavaScript with extensions. Some of it call some books and articles, etc., call it JavaScript XML. But really, what it is it's going to be a way for us, by using JSX, we're going to be able to mix our HTML with our JavaScript. All right. Now, one of the reasons that I had us take some time and go back and try to write this was I wanted to make sure, between what you've done today and what you've done in the Node part of the class, you've got most of the knowledge that you probably need in order to be able to start working with React. All right. Now, I'm sure you know this. Again, I can show you the pictures if we can find them, but React is in demand. Go out there and just literally go out to Indeed.com and put it in. All right. It can be used with any tech stack. So in other words, we're using it as part of MERN. All right. You could use React if you wanted to with Django. All right. And Python. So there's a lot of ways that it can be used. Now, next semester, and I believe you've been told this already, but if you haven't, then you're hearing it for the first time, or you're hearing it again. The class that runs next semester used to be called Mobile Application Development. And in that class, what we taught people was Java, and we taught people how to write Android apps. Starting with you guys, next semester, that class is changing. The class you're in right now, the one you're sitting in right now, is AWD1111, Database-Driven Website Development. Well, the class you're in right now is being renamed to Database-Driven Website Development 1, and the class that you take in spring is being renamed to Database-Driven Website Development 2. All right. And in that class, we're going to write web apps mostly and use a lot of database, but do it with C#. Now, what could end up happening over time, I don't know. But if you had never heard of this before, there's also something in React that we don't get to in here that's called React Native. And what React Native allows you to do is it allows you to basically use the equivalent of the MERN stack to actually write mobile apps. So you can write apps that can run either on Android or on iOS. All right. And again, all I'm trying to do is just give you a little bit of stuff if you haven't heard this stuff already. Okay. Now, we talked about the fact that this is component based. I showed you that on that first page. What React helps to do is to break down an application into a set of smaller components. And one of the advantages of doing this is just the idea of code reuse. All right. So again, you can end up using, the same code over and over again. All right. And again, that shouldn't be anything new to you. All right. But one thing that, again, I don't know with you two how much of this Mr. G went over or didn't go over, but when you build things in React and you build these components, there are two ways that you can actually build components. All right. You can build what are called functional components, and you can build what are called class components. Now, not too long ago at all, virtually everything that you built, virtually everything were class components. All right, you got to do a little bit more work. You got to do a few things in class components that you don't have to do in functional components, etc. All right, but today, what you're finding out a lot is what a lot of times, and what people are starting to do is they're building a lot more functional components than they are class components. All right. So if you look back, and I don't want to waste any more of your time on this, but if you look back here, when they talk about a single component, you'll notice that's a class component because it's a class. This uses a syntax virtually identical to the syntax that is used by Java, in that it's class followed by the name of the class, then the word extends. So in this case, whenever you create a class component, all right, they're always going to extend React.component. All right, so it's the component, basically the component class of React. All right, so that's how you'll set it up. The other thing that to notice about this is that when you do this, you must include a method in there called render. And what render does is it basically tells you what you want to output. All right, you can see there's some stuff on the side. You can read that stuff on your own. All right, when you use a functional component, all right, there is no render. It's just typically you put a return in there. And there's other stuff that you can add in there as well. All right. Now, you are used to, what I'm about to tell you, you are used to writing functions. All right. And you are used to calling functions. And when you call a function, you are used to, when you do these, when you call a function, you are used to calling a function and even passing parameters in. All right. I think that shouldn't be a surprise statement. There shouldn't be anything that's new in there that, like I said, that surprises you or anything else. But in React, when you pass things in, they're known as properties, and actually they're known as props. So we'll be doing quite a bit of work with props. And props basically are objects that hold information that allows you to control the behavior of a component. All right. But, and what I'm telling you right now is really, really important. The problem with props is props are immutable, which means that when you pass a prop in like this, so if you pass this in with somebody's name, you cannot change its value. They're not mutable, they are immutable. All right. So the way that you get around that is, rather than using props, or in addition to using props, you oftentimes use what's called state. State, like props, are also, it's also an object that allows you to hold information. But with state, that particular information may be changed inside of the component. So that's the big difference between these. We're going to go back and we're going to write this BMI app in just about 5 minutes. We're going to start, and probably there'll be a lot of stuff in there, or there very well could be. Now, you two may totally understand it from stuff you've done with Evan. I don't know. But with some of the rest of you, if this is your first jump into React, there might be a lot of stuff in there that really doesn't make a lot of sense. I'll try to write it slowly and explain it slowly, so hopefully it'll make some sense. All right. But just a couple of differences. I've already mentioned the big one. Props are immutable, where state is mutable, meaning that props can't be changed inside of a component. State can be changed. Props are passed into a component, all right, whereas state is contained inside of the component. And if you go, I don't really get that, you'll have to see it in action for it to make sense. All right. So when you work with props, most of the time you're going to end up saying this dot props dot something, like you see right here. When you work with state, you don't do that. With state, instead, one of the things that will pass up at the top of the program will typically be something called use state. And use state is what's referred to as a hook. You don't need to pass in use state when you work with class components. You only need it when you work with functional components. When you work with class components, you typically say this dot state. So bottom line is the big difference between props and state is that with props, they're, again, I mentioned this before, they're like parameters that you pass into a function. On the other hand, state is like a local variable that you declare inside of a function body. All right. So again, I'm just trying to give you, for lack of better words, kind of a high level overview of what's going on in here. And maybe a lot of the stuff I'm saying doesn't make a lot of sense. And even if it doesn't, actually, that is okay. All right. So I'm going to show you right now, we're going to start to build this, excuse me. We're going to start to build this project right now. And there are probably going to be times, when there'll be one or more things that, that I end up saying that might be, at least might be, a little bit different than the way they show it in a book or the way that you see it online. And again, I know we've talked about this kind of stuff before, but there is no automatic formula that says, hey, you should always do it like this. All right, that's just not the way that it works. All right, okay. So let me see, there was one more thing I've got some notes here off on the side that I've been using. And I want to see if I can find those. Where are they? Oh, where is that? Come on. Well, let me see if it's in here. Sorry about that, but like I said, I'm trying to do the best I can here to be complete when I go through this stuff. So let's see. Well, there's one of the ones I'm looking for. And is the other one here? Well, I know I've got it online here too, so let me go find it over here. Where is it? No, that wasn't it. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Well, I'm just going to go on. I'll find it. If we have another break, I'll find it then. All right. But let's go in and actually start to work with this. All right. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come in here. Give me a second. There we go. And let me close this. I don't need that one anymore. So sure, I'll save it. And I'd like you guys to follow along with me, please. And what I'd like you to do, don't worry, there is no more NPX in it minus Y, none of that stuff. But I'd like you to come in. We got our choice. We could run the command from right here, but I like to do it this way. So I'd like you to come in here and create a new folder right on the desktop. All right. And I'm going to call mine BMI React app. It doesn't really matter what you call it. All right, this will be something that you will eventually upload to your GitHub repo. So again, I called mine BMI React app. All right, then I'm going to open that up. I'm going to right mouse click on it and I'm going to choose my Git bash here. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type in npx create react app dot. Now, if I had not first created this folder called BMI React app, if I had not done that and I was just at my desktop, then I could type in npx create react app BMI-React-app, and it would create the folder for me. I've already created the folder. There really is no difference. The other thing too is, and again, I should look for it because I had a really good article that I'd kept. NPX is basically something that you get when you download Node, because when you download Node, you get NPM. NPM is the Node Package Manager, and I believe NPX is referred to as the Node Package Runner. What this is going to do, much like when we did our, when we came in and we started to create our package.json file and then do the installs, etc. in there, this is going to do that for us. So again, you probably have gone through this or something like this already. All right, so if you've got that, just hit enter. I should have hit enter first. Let's give me an error. Let's see. Could not determine executable to run. Well, why would that be? Let's see if we can figure that out. So let me clear. NPX, create, react, app dot. I don't know what I did the first time that I didn't do this time, but that's okay. So NPX create react app dot if you've already created the folder. If you have not created the folder, then it's NPX create react app and then give it the name of the folder. Again, I called mine BMI React app. All right. And this will take anywhere from a minute to maybe 2 or 3 minutes. When it comes back and it's all finished, it'll say happy hacking at the end. And then we're going to go in and take a quick look at the things that are inside of there. Well, that wasn't too bad at all. It's just about finished, I think. There you go, happy hacking. Now yours may take a little longer, and that's okay. But I want to type in here ls-a so you can see the stuff that's in here. Notice it made a .git. It made a git ignore. It put in a README. It gave us a node modules file, which is much more extensive than the node modules files we've been working with thus far. And what I mean is there's a lot more dependencies. So there's a lot more folders in there. All right. There is a package.json that you've seen before. There's a package.json like you've seen before. All right. There's a public, which we're going to get to in just a bit. But the most of the stuff that you're going to be working on in here, most of it is going to be in this source folder. All right. And we're going to look at that in just a second. But before we do, okay, let's see.
Oh, Mr. Scott, what
Yes.
exactly did you put in? Because I keep getting an error for my React, the NPX create React.
That's what I put in.
Okay, yeah, I put in. Okay.
I'm actually getting the same error as well. I put the same thing in.
All right, then try doing this. Remove that folder and see if right from your desktop you can type in npx create react app and then put in BMI React app. And if you still get the same error, then I've got another fix.
Okay, well, after the 7th try, it finally seems like it's installing.
All right. What you can do, you shouldn't have to do this, but what you can do is you can put in there and put in something like an npm I create react app. And typically when you do that, you put in the -G for global option. You're not supposed to have to do that anymore. All right. You're not supposed to have to, and I didn't. All right. But I've heard other people have to do that in the past, and I'm not sure why. All right. So if I come in here and there's just a couple things I want to show you because I want to get to where we're writing some code. But if I go in and open up the package.json, we're not going to touch this. I'm not going to change a bit of this. I'm not going to come in here and do anything. You'll notice that we've got, again, some development stuff, some production stuff, etc., some dependencies, etc. All right. This is what I want to look at in here. We're not going to change it. But all we have to do in order to be able to run our program is just say npm space start. That's it. Now, if you put in there npm space build, that's what you do when you basically want to get your app ready for production mode. All right, because it'll do a lot more builds and a lot more stuff behind the scenes. We're not going to worry about that for now. We're not going to be doing virtually anything with testing, and I've never used the eject, so I'm not sure even what that does. All right, but, and again, you may have already seen this. This might be what you guys did with Evan. I don't know. But again, if I come back in here and I open this up, first of all, I've got this open too, and I don't know. Let's see. Oh, I'm going to get, that's one I was using before. So let me exit from here. All right. But if I want to actually start running this now, I'm going to open this thing up that we've just created. So I'm going to open it up in Visual Studio Code. Okay. So I wish that when I'd set up Visual Studio Code, I'd set it up so I could just automatically run it. But let's see, I'm going to do a CD to desktop. And I'm going to do a CD to whatever this is called again, BMI React app. So a CD to BMI React app and a CD to BMI. Oh, I didn't put a dash React dash app and a code dot. All right. So that just brought up what we're working on in Visual Studio Code. Not much in there right now, you might think, but you'd be wrong. There's a lot of stuff in here right now. I've already shown you the package.json. I'm not going to go through any of that. But when you look, again, this is where most of the magic is going to take place. All right. Now, I will tell you that virtually for every single thing that we do in here, we're not going to worry. In fact, most of the time, I'll probably come in and I'll remove the logo.svg file. I'll remove the report web vitals. I'll remove the setup tests, and I'll remove the app.test.js. Most of the time, I'll remove those. They're basically their stuff. They're more advanced, and they're stuff we're not going to use. It does not hurt a bit, so leave them in there. All right, not a bit. But again, we're not going to do much, if anything, with any of those. All right. Now, and again, like I said, this is more for the benefit, not of you two, but more for the benefit of people who have not seen this before. And that is, I'm going to do a view terminal. And in my terminal here, I'm just going to type in npm start. It should come up, and basically, all right, it's starting it up. It automatically looks for port 3000. And even that is kind of weird, because with that port 3000, I've run it before when I've got something going on port 3000 and it is said to me, port 3000 is in use. Would you like to use another port? And if I say yes, it goes to 3001. But I've also had it where I try running it and it tells me that it can't run because port 3000 is in use. Now, I could understand it if it was always one way or the other way, but I've seen it both ways on the same system, and I don't get that. All right. Now, that's the React logo. That's that logo.svg file. So we're going to start cleaning this up in a minute. All right. So there's not much in here. And again, not so much for the two of you, but for everybody else, I just want to mention a couple things. So what I'd like to do is to take a couple of minutes and go through and take a look at what's in here. All right, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to move that way down, and we're going to look at the files that are in here right now. All right, so app.css, there is a file in here called app.js, and you'll notice what we import into that file is ./app.css. So that's this file. So anything that you add to the app.css file is going to basically, all right, any CSS that you add in there will be shown or used here. All right. And, you know, this is just regular CSS, so there shouldn't be anything in there. I mean, there's a little bit of work in here with some animation and stuff. They do keyframes. I don't know how much work you guys did with keyframes with Mr. G. I did very little, but, you know, notice there's a display flex, etc. And there's other stuff that you should understand. All right. And when we look in here, again, you'll notice this is a functional based component. So when we import this logo, that is this file right there. So it is telling you that you want to bring in from the folder that we're currently in, logo.svg. If I commented that line out right now, if I just come in and comment that line out and I save and I go back and I look in here, you'll notice, okay, there's an error. All right. Now we could go and bring it back in and we could just remove it. It doesn't really matter. All right. But one nice thing about this is as you start working with it, typically when you screw up something like I just did, you'll know right away what the problem is. All right. This is a functional based component. And I already told you before. All right. Function app. And notice there's a big return statement in here. All right. Now, again, I could be preaching to the choir here. I might not. It doesn't matter one way or the other. But you'll notice in here that I've got a div that starts here, and I've got a div, the same div that ends there. All right. If I were to remove that div and just put in, for example, a header and an image, I'd get an error. Technically, you can only return one thing, all right, when you have a functional based component. Well, you're saying, no, that's not true. There's a header here and there's an image and there's some paragraph. Yeah, but it's inside of a div. So you can kind of look at it. It's not exactly the same, but it's almost like you had an array or a list so you can return multiple things. Now we're using the class name here of app. You can see that. If we just had this, so I'm going to remove this for a second and I'll bring it back, but I'm just going to remove this for right now. All right, whoops, try that again. All right, if I had just a div and I did not want to do anything special with it, so if I had just a div, all right, what's going to happen is it's going to render this stuff and it's going to render out a div. If I don't even want that div there, I can do this. Just like that, where I have nothing here and nothing in there. All right, those can be left empty. For now, we'll just leave it the way it is. Okay. Sometimes what you find too is the function's name here is app and the class name is app. So sometimes people will take that and make it lowercase just so they can differentiate between one and another. It doesn't really matter that much one way or the other. And if you go, well, that doesn't confuse me, then just leave it the way it is. All right. Notice in here as we start to look through what's in here, we've got image source equal logo. And you'll notice that logo is within curly braces. All right. And you're going to see a lot of that where we put stuff within curly braces that we want to be able to print out. Why? Because putting it within curly braces means it's now an object. All right. So that's the logo object that's in there. All right. Okay. I don't think there's anything else that's in there that we really have to worry about other than notice, and you know how to export now, but it's not exports anymore. It's export, and you need the word default. And you'll notice it's app. Why? Because that's the name here. That name and this name here must be the same. All right. And again, I'm just trying to hit you with a couple of the high points here. I don't expect you to totally understand everything. I don't expect you to totally remember everything. Again, the app.test is if you are going to go in here and run different kinds of system tests in here, you can do that. All right. The actual file that makes the program go, so to speak, is right here, the index.js file. All right. And in that index.js file, we're telling it that line right here, which means I want you to run everything that's in this file, the app.js file. All right. And notice that index.js, just like app.js, index.js has its own CSS file. All right. Now, I didn't mention this. Where is it? Oh, we got to go on. That's okay. The logo file I've already mentioned to you. Okay. We're not going to use it. We're not going to worry about it or anything else. All right. And this report vitals, that has to do with different kinds of statistics. If you want to run them, we're not going to worry about that either. This is setting up your tests. Again, we're not going to worry about that. And the get ignore is quite a bit bigger. All right. The other thing with the get ignore is if you look down here, notice it's got npm-debug.log, and then immediately after that, it's got yarn-debug.log. You can use npm, which is what I'm recommending that we use, the node package manager. But if you don't like it, or if you want to learn something else, there is something that is virtually equivalent to using npm, and that's called yarn. All right. And again, do you have to use that no, not at all. All right. So like I said, I wanted to run through a few of the things that were in here. We're going to make some changes in here in just a bit. I'm going to go until, I don't know, for about 10 or 15 more minutes, then we can take another break. Now, in the public folder here, there's the favicon, and I think that's I was going to say that's a smaller version of the logo. There's two different sizes of logos. There's a manifest.json file this is one of the things. It's a system file. You really shouldn't be messing with it. All right. There is a robots.txt file, and you may or may not have heard of this before. I don't know. All right. If you are one of the students who had me for AWD1111, you should know what robots.txt is. And what it is typically what you put into a robots.txt file is a list of file names that when a search engine company like Yahoo or Google, etc., when they go through and spider or go through your website, it's the files you don't necessarily want them to look through. They're not, I mean, they're basically private files that have nothing to do with the website at all. All right. Now, that's all of them except the most important one that's right here, index.html. All right. And again, if you have never seen this stuff before, what I'm about to tell you, this might almost sound a bit incredible. This doesn't look any different from stuff we've done before. They do have a theme color. There's no biggie there. But there's one line of code in here that is big, and that's this line right here. That line, that div, that particular line is where everything happens in here. All right. So basically everything that you tell it to render goes inside of this div with an ID of root. All right. Now it's up to you. You can rename that if you want to. I don't know why you would want to, but you can. All right. And a lot of times people come through here as well as they get rid of the comments. I think it's kind of nice to leave the comments in there, and I would strongly suggest that you read through them just so that you've got a little bit of an idea of what's going on in here. All right. Again, if you don't agree, then don't do it. All right. So let's get to this and actually start doing something. All right. So I'm going to close this public. the first thing I would like you to do, everybody, I would like you to do here is we're going to make a new folder inside of source right here. So I'd like you to click on source and right mouse click on it and choose new folder, and in lowercase write the word assets. That's typically where you're going to end up putting things like images. What I'm about to do is I'm about to come in and bring in those same 4 images that I had in the JavaScript one I showed you. Now, if you found images, you can bring yours in. You can go out and do it later. It doesn't really matter. But if you remember when I showed you the run of this when we first started, I had my same images in there that I had in the JavaScript program. So once this assets thing is in there, there it is. I'm going to go back and I'm going to find my JavaScript program, all right, which was, I just called it BMI.js. And under images, I'm going to highlight those 4 images. I'm going to right mouse click and choose copy. And let's see if it lets me bring it in here directly like this, or if I have to do it another way. All right, now I'm going to right mouse click, and it doesn't seem to like it like that. So let me just do it like this. So there's the 4, and I'm just going to go and drag. I'm going to drag them right into assets, and it copied them in. So now in this assets folder, all right, in this assets folder, we now have in the images that we're going to need. Okay, not that that was a big thing one way or the other. All right, so now I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup work. Okay, you're not going to do this for every single app that you create, but since this is a first app, and since we're trying to be as simplistic here as possible, I'm going to get rid of things that I don't think we're going to need. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down on my control key, and I'm going to tap. Now I'm going to hold down on control. I don't need the app.css. I don't need the app.test.js. I don't need the logo file. I don't need the report vitals.js, and I don't need the setup test.js. You can leave them in there. It doesn't hurt anything to leave them in there. I'm not going to use any of them. So I'm highlighting all 5 of those: app.css, app.test.js, logo.svg, reportwebvitals.js, and setuptest.js. Once they're all highlighted, you can do it all at once or individually. It doesn't matter. I'm going to right mouse click. No, for some reason, oh yeah, it is still highlighted. And I'm going to choose delete. And I should get a message, hey, you're about to delete these 5 files. Now don't do what I did this morning, which was stupid. I accidentally in here, instead of highlighting app.css, I highlighted app.js. You don't want to remove that one. So it should be as it says in here, those 5. I'm not going to read them again. All right. So let me double check. Yes, 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 yes. All right. So I'm going to move them to the recycle bin. All right. All right. Again, I'm just going to keep going, and I'm going to take for granted if I'm going too fast or if something doesn't make sense, you're going to ask. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up index.js. Why? Because now I've got this import web vitals that we just got rid of. So mine is line 5 and probably yours is too. I'm going to remove that line. And then down at the bottom, we don't need this anymore either because that's that web vitals. As it says, if you want to start measuring performance, so it has to do basically with you being able to do analytics, which we're not going to do. All right, so I'm going to remove that. So again, I went in and I removed the 5 files that I mentioned to you. Then I went into index.js and I removed the import for web vitals, and I removed the comment down at the bottom and the actual where we were calling the web vitals. All right. All right. So I'm going to do a file save, and I'm going to close this one. All right. In fact, I think I can close this too. Let's see. Do I want to save it? Sure. Okay. All right. The next thing we want to do is we actually do want to open this. I guess I should have left it open. We want to open up the app.js. You'll notice again, functional component because it's got the word function in there. All right. And this is everything right now that we want to return. Okay. We're going to highlight everything between the div tags, not the div tags, but everything between the div tags, highlight it and remove it. So right now we're not returning squat, but we're going to start putting stuff in just a minute. So this is all we have in here right now. In fact, we don't need this import logo anymore either because we're not using the logo. So we can get rid of that as well. I should have mentioned that. I apologize for not. All right. So right now, this is all we have. Now you may or may not remember, but at the beginning, a few minutes ago, when we were talking about props and we were talking about state, all right, I mentioned that when you use state and when you want to use state in a function component like we have here, you have to bring in what's called a hook. So that's going to become our new line 1 here. We're going to type in import and we'll put in React, comma, then in curly braces, use state, I could type, all right, inside of curlies, all right, and then from React. All right. Now, if you remember, and I know you all do, because a week ago we were doing just straight node stuff, basically, where we were saying something like const express equal require express. And one of the things I mentioned to you back then was if you don't have to do this, but if you look here, if you go into package.json, there is something in the package.json file that you add. I don't remember what it is, but it's literally a line of code in the package.json that we were using previously up in the main area. And then instead of saying like we were always doing like const express equal express, all right, you could just say import with express. All right. And the only reason I'm telling you this is we're going to be using imports now. And you'll notice when we import, you have to tell it where it's coming from, if it's external, and if it's internal, where it lives. Now neither one of those should be like a real big surprise to you. All right. So what we want to do is we want to be able to run this program. And when we run this program, again, if you look in here, you've seen the run already. But if I come back in here again, and let's see if I redo this now, let's see. All right, so if I come back in here, it blew up before because of the stuff that I removed. So let me clear this. All right. And let me see if I do an npm start if everything is hunky-dory. All right. Now it still says that it's got some problems. It says it cannot solve that. That means that somewhere in here, I am still referring to that. And it looks like it says error in app.js. All right. And it looks like in lines 4 and 5. Well, I've removed that, but I'm not sure. This is app.js, but something in there, I may have to put that back, but I don't think I do. I've got a working copy of it, so I'm not worried about it. All right. But what we want to do, and I'm going to have you set this up, and then we're going to take our next break. All right. Because in here, in between these divs, all right, we've got our function app. This should only contain JSX. And remember, JSX, also known as JavaScript or JavaScript with extensions. All right. The only stuff that should go into that div right there is basically the equivalent of HTML or something we literally want to return or display. Okay. So we don't want to display our state right now the way we're working on it. So we're going to come up here and open up some lines and we're going to put some code in here. So this is code that we'll be able to use down here, but we're going to basically manipulate it up here. All right, and I hope what I just said made at least a little bit of sense. All right, so I'm going to come over here and I'll put a message in here. Don't really have to, but I'll say, how about like state variables? Okay, and we're going to make 4 of them. And we're going to make them. I'm going to explain them. Then we're taking a break. All right, so I'm going to say here const height, set height. And if, like I said, if it doesn't make any sense, don't let it bother you right now. Equals use state 0. All right, the next line will look just like this, but instead of saying height, it's going to say weight. In fact, I'm going to put this in there 4 times. Don't worry, all these errors will go away in just a moment. All right, we're just declaring 4 variables with the same name. That's why we're getting an error. All right, in here we want BMI. And in here, we're going to use the word message. All right. And we'll put in here set message. Now, with these, and let me do this. I don't know, maybe you hate it when I do this. I don't know. But I just want everything pushed over so you see it all. All right. These are both numeric variables. So initializing them like this to 0, giving them a default of 0 makes sense. This should say not BMIT, but BMI. All right. This, you might think, well, it's BMI. We should initialize it to 0. No, let's initialize it just to the empty string. So when you start running the program, it'll have no value whatsoever in it. That makes more sense. This will be either the underweight, overweight, optimal weight, or obese. So we'll make that an empty string as well. I don't know why it's doing it like that, but it is. Oops. All right. So what we have just done in there is we have set in here. Remember, can one of you tell me? We have brackets here. What does that mean? What are these brackets
It's
here?
an array.
Yes. Thank you. This is an array. So we're for height, we're also going to have a set height. For weight, we're also going to have a set weight. For BMI, we're going to have a set BMI. For message, we're going to have a set message. All right? Because the set is where we're actually going to be able to manipulate the variable that is being set. And it's also, I don't know if it's a rule, if it'll break if you don't do it or not, but everything I've ever seen, it's always set and you use camel case and you only capitalize the first letter. I don't think it would hurt if you said here set BMI with caps, but I'm just doing it the way that I've always seen it done. That's what I'm telling you. So those are going to be the variables that are going to allow us, they're going to allow us to be able to go in and change our state. All right. So I just want to see right now, for my own edification, I want to see right now if this still works. So, I mean, I'm just going to come in here and do an H1 and just say, hello, world, something like that. All right, now it says here, Webpack compiled with 2 errors. I do have my export default, so I'm still trying to think of where those errors are coming from, but it appeared when we did that before, it still, like I said, had something to do, cannot resolve, let's see. I mean, I ran this before and I had absolutely no problems with it. I'm doing it the same way. So it's this .css file. Oh, I know what it is. It's in here. I'm referring to app.css, and that's one of the ones we got rid of. So I should be able to comment that out, and hopefully that'll fix everything. Let's find out. So I'm going to do a file save. I'm going to come back down into here. I am going to clear this, and I'm going to try to do my npm start again and see if it still gives me an error. All right, or if it runs fine now. Okay, there it is. There's my hello world. So all I've done is I replaced all that stuff we had in there with this. You know, if I go in there and just change this from hello world to hello world today, all right, and I save and I go back again, you see my change is immediately reflected in here. All right. So we've gone through and we verified that all the stuff that we've done so far works. What we're going to do after the break in just a couple minutes, all right, what we're going to do after the break is that when we run this, and again, I showed you the run before, but I can't bring it up again because I'm already using port 3000. We're going to create a fairly simplistic form inside of index.js. So when we come back from the break, we're going to come into index.js, all right, and I'm sorry, not index.js, app.js. We're going to come back in here and we're going to write some stuff, for lack of better words. We'll come back in here and instead of having this, we're going to create a form. Now the form is going to be butt ugly, totally fine. All right. You're going to fix it up and make it look the way you want it to look. All right. So it's 2:15. Let's take a break till 2:25, please. And then let's come back in and we'll fix this thing up. All right. We don't have actually that much more to do. And then we'll call it a period. All right, we're going to see how much of this we can get done by 3 o'clock, and I think we can finish it by then. So hopefully you're here. If you're not, open up the app.js file. We're going to write a bunch of stuff in here. Then we're going to write some stuff in here, and then that'll be it. All right. Now, just so you know, we're going to put some divs in here. All right. And the first div we're going to put in, I put in a class name of container. Okay. Why do you add classes? So you can add CSS, right? All right. And I'm not putting any CSS in mine. I've already mentioned this to you before, that this is going to be part of your job, part of what you're going to be graded on. I want each one of these to look unique. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in my div with a class name, and it doesn't have to be container, but you know, you're used to kind of using container from you're kind of used to using container from when we were using it in Bootstrap. All right, so there's my beginning and my end. All right, and first thing I'll do is I'll put in an H2 tag, and it's just going to say, the other one said JavaScript BMI calculator, I believe, so this one will say React BMI calculator. Okay. Now, again, if I do save this and I jump back into here, not there, here, there it is. I mean, it's nothing. Mine's going to be pushed way over to the left. I'm not using any Flexbox. I'm not using anything CSS. You will be. All right. So I've got that. And then I'm going to create a form. Now, I'm going to say here, this may be different, but I'm going to say on submit, I'm going to call a routine that I'm going to end up writing down or up above in a little bit. And it's going to be called calculate BMI. All right. And when I do it like this, all right, let's see, on submit equals, I got to double check my own notes. I'm sorry. That's what I thought. This has to be inside of curly braces. Was it the whole thing? Like that. All right. Believe it or not, what I'm just showed you right here is one of the most important things that you are going to have to start to learn to use, to understand, etc. All right. And it just is. I mean, I can't say it any other way than that. And I'm going to explain it to you Good golly. I'm going to explain it exactly what I mean right now. And like I said, what I'm telling you may make little to no sense at the current time. But, all right, this is basically saying is when we submit the form, we want to call this routine. All right, and it may not sound like much, but that's up here. We're going to write this, calculate BMI. All right, and we still have to go in up here and we still have to set our constants and we still have to put in our logic. So right now, if we went to run the program, we'd probably end up getting an error now because we haven't written anything called calculate BMI. And don't worry about that. That's totally fine. All right. Okay. So in here, what do we want to do? Well, we're setting up our form. So let's come in here and let's do this. We're going to have a bunch of divs again. So I'm going to have a div in here and I'm going to start with a label and it'll be height. And I'm going to also try to let the user know it's supposed to be between 12 and 96. And you better spell label right. All right. So we've got that label for our height. And then I'm going to give you some code that's not going to make a lot of sense until you see it in action. So we want to say in here, input, and we're going to say value equal, and this right there, that's going to be the value that we end up putting into, that will be the value that we end up putting into the text box. All right, up here. That's, the value that we put in there is going to be referred to as our height object. All right. Okay. And then I'm going to drop down a line because otherwise it would scroll off the screen. I want you to be able to see everything. So this would all be typically on one line, but again, I'm putting it on multiple lines so you can see all of it. On change equal, and again, we're going to go over all of it in just a minute. And then we're going to end that. Okay. And I'm going to just grab all of this and I'm going to put another one right below it because this is the height. And then below that, we're going to put in the weight. I'll let you put that in and then we're going to go over what, excuse me, what all of this stuff in here means. And we may get all the way through with this today and you may say, boy, you sure picked a hard enough one to go through for the first one. I tried to pick out something that would do more than just put the logo spinning on the screen and saying hello world. I thought this would be something that if you understood how it worked from a straight JavaScript perspective, that hopefully you'd be able to understand it from working on it in here. All right. So while you're putting this in, if you'll just listen up a little bit, all right, let's start to go over what all of this stuff means. We're almost done with the form. Almost, not quite, but we're almost there. All right, this should make sense, the label. Okay, nothing big there. This says that the value of what goes in there, like I said, is going to be height. See this thing right here that says height? That one right there that says height, that is this. That is this. And the weight that's down here, the weight, that is this. All right. And what we're doing here, this EVT, you might look at that and go, what the heck is EVT? All right. EVT is event. You can just call it E if you want to. It really and truly does not matter. Sometimes you just see this referred to with an E in there. In fact, should look like this. I thought that looked a little funky. But hopefully, one of the things that you're starting to see, for instance, these are arrow functions. Okay, since it's on one line, we're not dropping down. We don't need that extra curly brace, etc. in there. But they're working in a similar way to the request and response that we used with Node. So we are coming in here, and what we're saying is anytime there is a change event, meaning anytime we put something different into that text box, we want to be able to set the height based on the value that we put in there. So what set height is doing is it is allowing us to change the state of the object. And weight is the same thing, but again, it's working with the weight. All right. Now, we didn't have to set it up exactly like this. It's just the way that I did set it up. I'm going to put one more in here. I'm going to put in one more set of divs right here. Why? Because we need our two buttons. All right. So I'm going to put in here button, class name equals button. And again, I'm using a lot of names that are very similar, if not identical, to the names that are used inside of Bootstrap. And guess what? You can bring Bootstrap into React. We're not going to do it today, but we will do it eventually. And I'm going to say in here type equals submit. All right. And we'll say submit on there for the name, and it'll be a button. That'll be the first one. We're going to make one more button. Now, this other button that we're about to make, it's going to be, you can call it whatever you want, but it's basically going to be the equivalent of a reset button. All right. So I'm going to come in here and again say button, class name equals btn, just like we did. But now I'm going to say one more thing. I can say type equals. I'll say, oops, geez Louise, Jeff. I'm going to come in here and I'll say type equals reset, which is fine, but I want to add one more thing on this. And that is on click equals reload. We're going to write a reload method in just a minute. And when we write this, we do not put in here these. All right. And we will end it. And after that, we can put whatever we want in here, but I'm just going to put in clear. Now let me view and word wrap so you can see it. So this is one line of code here. All right. One thing I want you to already start to understand is this. When you look at reload here, when you look at that set height, or when we look at these things that are inside of curly braces, this is literally, remember, in JavaScript, a function can be used like a variable. That's kind of what we're doing here. But what this is doing, and this is maybe the most important thing I've said in this entire lecture, what this means is when you click the button that's going to say reset, all right, in fact, I should have put in here, clear. When you click the button that'll be called clear, we want the reload method to run. I'm going to say that one more time. When we click the button that we have named clear, we want the reload method to run. You do not, repeat, you do not put parentheses in there, because then it's going to keep calling it and calling it and calling it. All we're doing right here is we are sending a message to the system that is saying when the button is clicked, this is the method that should be called. All right. And I'm hoping by going over that like that, I'm hoping that at least makes a little bit of sense. All right. So again, I want to go on, but I'm taking it for granted if there's any questions you're going to ask, and I'm taking for granted you've got all this stuff put in there. All right. So I'm going to go down, and after my form, all right, after my form, I'm going to add in here, after the form, another div. In fact, I'm going to add 2 more, and then we're going to be done with this part of it. So I'm going to put a div in here, but not a dib. Good golly. I'm going to put a div in here, and that div is going to say, I'll make it an H3. We could do this any way we wanted to. Your BMI is, and what do we want to put there? Curly brace, BMI. That's going to be the BMI that we are going to calculate up above in just a minute. All right. And after that, we're also going to calculate your status, underweight, overweight, etc. And we're going to print that out in here also. So we're going to come in and say, and you could put it any way you want. I just put it in a P tag, but we're going to say message. All right. This BMI that's right here, that is that BMI right there. That message that you see right there is that message right here. All right. So there is a definite correlation going on in here. So now what we have is we've got our form, we've got our buttons, and we're going to have our output is going to come down here after we run this, but there's one thing still missing, and that is we want to be able to put in, we want to be able to put in the associated image. We're going to do that now, and guess what? We're going to do it in a div. All right, and I'm going to give this one a class, just in case you decide you want to round the images or do something. So I just called it class equal, and I just called it IMG container. Again, you can call it anything you want. All right. And in here, it's going to be an image tag. Remember, we say source equals, guess what? In here, it's going to say IMG source. We haven't declared that yet. We'll do it up above in just a minute. And here we'll say alt equals, because you should always have an alt tag, and we'll say body type image. All right. This is a lot to throw at you. All right. And I get that. That's why we're going to finish this today, and we'll look at another one tomorrow.
Mr. Scott, I got a question for you real quick. So my on submit calculate BMI, it keeps saying it's not defined.
Yeah. You're going to have errors because we got a bunch more code we got to write in up here.
Okay, yeah. Just make sure. Yep.
Okay. So if you got errors, don't worry about it. Really. Okay. But that said, this is basically an HTML form. All right. I mean, you know what H2s are, you know what divs are. These are labels. All right. And these are basically the equivalent of text boxes in here. All right. But now what we're doing is we're filling it up with React stuff, because those values, the value of height and the value of weight, are basically going to determine the state of the program. All right. And hopefully what I just said made at least a little bit of sense. Now, the only other thing I want to mention in here, totally fine the way this is, but a lot of times what you see is sometimes people call this event because that's what it is. Sometimes they just call it E. It doesn't matter. If you're not a person who likes typing, just call it E. It doesn't matter. But whatever you call it here, you got to use the same name there. All right. You can leave it EVT. You can write event. You see it a whole bunch of ways. I'll just leave it there with an E. It doesn't really matter, like I said, one way or the other. So we set that up. And this is, so again, the stuff that's in here, this will be what? I don't want to do that. I'm trying to remember how we write comments in here. Is it like that? No. All right, forget it. I was just going to write a comment in there that said that, we're going to write, this is going to be the BMI, and then down below, this is going to be the image. It's fine. All right. Now, as you just said, let's make this work. Okay. Well, one reason that this is not working, and I don't know if this is the error you're getting or not, but in here, where is it? Right there, we don't have an image source that we've defined. There is no image source. So let's define that first. And I'm going to actually move down a few lines, but I'm just going to say let image source. That's all I'm going to do. I'm not going to give it a value. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to put that in there. But we're going to put a bunch of other stuff up above it. Okay? So let's go in and put in this stuff. And then whatever we have to put in here yet, this is all we got left for this particular program. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set those same constants that I set before. So const min height, I set that equal to 12. Const max height, these are arbitrary. You could have come up with other numbers if you wanted to. 96. Const min weight is 1. And those, you don't even need these curlies or these semicolons, they'll be removed anyway. And const max weight is 777. All right, that's first thing. Okay. The second thing we have to worry about is someplace in here, we got this thing that's never been defined. Calculate BMI has never been defined. All right. Now, you should know this by now, because I know what a good job Mr. G does teaching the AWD 1000 class, that this on submit means that we want to run this function when you click the submit button. That should make sense to each and every one of you. So we don't have a function that we've written that's called calculate BMI. So we're going to write that right now. And how did I do this? I said, I want to use the exact same name and case this. So remember, what you can do in this language is you can say let, and I can actually assign the function name to that, equals, and we need that event again, that same E that we just used, with an arrow function, and we will put in a curly right here. All right. The first thing that we want to be concerned with is you click that submit button. We don't want it to go anywhere. We're not sending this off someplace else. All right. So we want to basically prevent form submission to server. And how do we do that? We say E dot prevent default. And that's going to make sure that doesn't happen. All right. So that just says the default action when you press the submit button, the default action is to send that information someplace or do something with it, depending on whether it was a get or a post. All right, we're telling it, no, don't do anything with it. We're going to handle it in here internally. Now, if the height is triple equal 0, or the weight is triple equal 0, all right, well, what that means, you may or may not remember this, but up above, we defaulted them to 0. So we said, hey, when the program starts, we want these both to show a 0. So if they show 0, we haven't entered a height or a weight. All right. So I'll just do an alert. And I'll say, you must enter a height and a weight. Now, there's other ways you can handle it, but we haven't talked about a lot of this stuff yet. All right, so an alert for now, an alert will work just fine. All right, so this will validate entries for both height and weight. So if we get down to here, if that if was skipped, well, then we know something was put into both those. But now we have to validate height is within range. So else if height is less than the min height, or height is greater than the max height, well, we know then we put in something that was out of range. All right. So we can come in here and we can do another alert. And I said here, height must be between. Now I could literally hard code in here and put in 12 and 96. But over time, it's possible those values will change. So I put it, the way I did it was height must be between plus, I'll put it on 2 lines so you can read it. Min height and max height. All right. So that will validate that our weight is within range. And I'm going to copy all this because the next thing, or that's the height rather. So because I want to do the weight next. So now I'm going to do the exact same thing. I just validated the height. And now I want to come back in here. And I didn't grab all of it, did I? Son of a gun. Let me try it again. I want to grab the entire if statement. The if and the else. So if this, in fact, I did do it right. So let me grab that. Come on. There we go. So we want to validate both that the height is within range. And we also want to validate that the weight is within range. So there we're validating the height. And here, all I have to do is come in and validate, change all these H's to W's. W, 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 you get the idea. W and W. So now I have come in and I have checked for there being nothing in the height or the weight or in both. And if that's the case, it should say you must enter a height and a weight as a simple alert. Then we're validating that the height here is between 12 and 96, which is what we set as our arbitrary constants. All right, then we're validating that our weight is also within range. So if I get down to here, if I get down to that else, if I do get down to there, the inputted height and the inputted width are in range, whatever you want to say, calculate BMI. All right, so if I get down to this point, so I'm going to say here, let BMI equal weight divided by, again, math.pow height 2 times 703. I don't know who came up with that formula, but somebody did. So what do we have for math.pow height? There we go. All right. Now that we've done that, we've got our BMI. Good. Well, so what? Well, the so what is this. Now that we've got a BMI, now we can use that. We can do our set BMI. And how do we do that? We say set BMI to what? BMI that we just figured out, and we'll put in here a .2 fixed. We'll do it just at 2 decimal places because it looks a little nicer. All right, so that's now done within 2 decimal places. All right, so we have now handled being able to figure out what the BMI is, but there's still 2 more things that we have to do. We have to be able to write out the message, which says either underweight, optimal weight, overweight, or obese, and then we have to put in the right image. And we're going to do all those in this else because now we're in the valid area. So we're going to come in here and we'll add our logic to print our weight status message right there. And then when we get done, we'll add our logic to add the appropriate image. All right, so that's what we've got left, and then we're finished. All right, so first this logic to print this. If the BMI is less than 18.5, all right, did we have to say 18.5? No. We could have come in and again added more constants up here like I did with the JavaScript one, but I didn't do it here. Just to show you, you don't have to do it that way. All right, so if the BMI is less than 18.5, we want to set our message to underweight. This set message again right there is that set message right here. We are changing state. All right. Else if the BMI is less than 25.0, we'll do another set message and we'll say optimal weight. Otherwise, if the BMI is less than 30.0, that means they're overweight, so we will set the message to overweight. Now, I do something a little different than a lot of people do here. All right, we could just say, this should handle it. Else, set message, obese. And that should be fine. That should work just fine. But I still like to protect myself and say else if BMI is greater than or equal to 30.0, set it to obese. That's just the way I write things. I have been burnt in the past by expecting, hey, there shouldn't be a problem here. The system knows what I'm trying to do. And then you find out that it doesn't. All right. So taking this from the top, okay, logic to print the weight status message. If the BMI that we just calculated up here is less than 18.5, then we're using our setter to set the message to underweight. Otherwise, if we get down to here, it's got to be at least 18.5. But if it's between 18.5 and 25 or 24.9999999, then it's optimal weight. If it gets down to here, it's at least 25. So if it's 25 but less than 30, it's overweight. Otherwise, if it's greater than or equal to 30, it's obese. So now the only thing that we've got left is to add the logic in here for our image source. All right. Now I'm going to move this up there because if I don't, I'm going to get an error. So that thing that says let image source, I'm going to make sure that's inside of my else statement there. And now I have to let it know what image I want it to show. Well, I want to make sure there's no image in there at all if there's no weight. Okay, so if the BMI is less than 1, meaning it's 0 or negative for some reason, I'm just going to say that image source image source is equal to null. All right. Otherwise, I'm going to start making pretty much my same kinds of checks that I just made. So I'll say else if the BMI is less than 18.5. Now, hopefully what you see here is, notice I've got 18.5 here and I've got 18.5 here. They're both referring to the same thing. But if in the future they change this, all right, so it's not 18.5 anymore. Let's say they make it 20 that you're underweight. Now I've got to remember to change it in two places. Whereas if I had come up here and made it a constant, all right, then I'd only have to put it, I put the constant in two places. So it's all a matter of taste as far as how you set this up. Now, there's different ways that you can bring this in, but since we haven't talked about a lot of stuff yet, I'm going to write it like this. IMG source equals require, and we're going to say ... slash source slash assets slash, and then we've got our underweight .png file. Okay. I'll leave that right there because now we got to put in the other ones. So else, if the BMI is less than 25.0, I'm going to copy this line and then just change the name at the end. All right. And if it's less than 25, this is optimal weight. Now, if you named your stuff differently, or if you don't have those pictures, this isn't going to work. I have the pictures in there, so it should work. This was overweight. All right. And then finally, I've got my last one. And again, I'll paste that in. After we get done with this, there's literally 3 more lines we have to write and we're finished. All right. That is it for this routine, albeit a fairly big routine. All right. We could start modularizing, but I just set it up like this because I set it up like this. The last thing that we want to do, like I said, 3 lines. Okay. And we want to do this, but we don't want to be in this. We don't want to be in our calculate BMI function. All right. So this curly that's right here. All right. That one there. We want to go down, 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 down. So it's got to be after that curly. And we say let reload equal window dot location dot reload. That's our clear. And gentlemen, we have finished. Now, could there be errors in mine? Of course. You know how I type. All right. So yes, there definitely could be errors in. When I did this last night, when I wrote this, I wrote it very slowly and there were no errors in it and it worked right away. Doing it in front of a crowd, whether they're live or, whatever, there could be errors in here. So I'm going to do a file save. In fact, yeah, that should be fine. A file save here, and I'll come in here. I haven't changed that one, so I shouldn't have to do anything. So I'm going to come back into here. I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to do my npm start. and we'll see if it comes up with any errors. Well, that ain't good. You know, it should be showing me something. But I do have a bunch of these open from here, so I don't know if that could be, it's supposed to come up, when it comes up, it's supposed to look like this, just like that. All right. But it is not showing anything. Let's see if we got an error in here. Huh. Let me clear this again and try it one more time. NPM start. Notice again, it says something is already running. Now here it did ask me if I want to run it on another port. I'm just gonna clear this. I'm gonna do another Control C. And I'm gonna go back to that command I showed you before, which was, there you go. npx kill minus port 3000. All right, so I'm going to come back in here. All right, clear. Try to run it again. There it is. Now, again, ugly as hell, but that's totally fine. If I come in here and put in nothing, there's my, please enter a valid weight and height. If I put in a height that's out of whack, remember it's 12 to 96. So if I put in 11, please enter a valid height, weight, and height. All right, so the same thing. Now, if I do put in valid 72, but I leave my weight invalid, again, please enter a valid weight and height. All right. I guess that what I probably did, if I go back and look at this quickly, let me go back to here and back to my app.js file. I think I put the same message in down here. Where's our valid height and valid weight? There. Please enter valid height. No, it's not showing that. Oh, because I didn't put in something that was out of range. That's why. Let's do that. So if I put in this, please, oh, it's not. It's only showing me that message. I'm not sure why, but it is. Let's see what happens if we do put in stuff that's valid. 72 and 100. That person should be underweight. You are underweight, and there is the image. Okay. If we put in here 167, that person should be optimal weight, and you see that they are. If we put in 200, they should be overweight, and you can see that they are. And if we put in 333, they should be obese, and you can see that they are. So the only thing I'm going to be responsible for, and I will do this before tomorrow, is I want to see why all of my error messages that I thought would be printing are not printing. All right. But what you've seen right here, I want you to go back in to your app.css file. All right. Or add your app CSS or put it in your index.css. I want you to make this look decent. Again, at a minimum, you're going to want to display flex to put it, to center it, you know, add some margin, etc. in here. You probably want to, you know, there's a lot of different things that you can do. All right. So do you both understand what, you know, what I'm expecting you to do with this? Questions?
You idea?
Yeah, so I have a question on, can I see your let image if statement?
Let image, sure. Let's see if we get rid of that. That?
Yeah, right there.
Again, I got a big L statement in here. So when I calculate the BMI, I really should have broken that up into another method and call that, then written another method to find them, to print the message, then entered another method to do the um, image. So really what I put in here, this if statement starts in line 33 and it goes all the way down to line 80. I mean, that's just about 50 lines, which is pretty big for a method. It could have easily been broken up into a couple, 2 or 3 methods. It would have made it a little bit more modular. All right. I just did it the way I did it. Okay. Did that answer your question, John?
Yeah, you answered my question, but every time I'm trying to, I saved all, and it's just not pulling up. Like nothing's coming up on my.
Well, that's what happened to mine at first too. All right. And that's why I had to put in that kill command. All right. And you may even have to get out of it and get back into it again. I mean, one thing you're going to find with this is in its own way, it's software, so it's quirky. There's going to be times you're like, I did everything right. Why isn't this working? And sometimes there might not be an answer, or may not be an answer that you like, or whatever. All right. Clayton, did you have a question too?
Yeah, I have a question, but it says module not found. Empty
Or
dependency, no request. My error. And I think it's line 17, to be honest with you. I don't know. There's
that we're
3
up on?
numbers.
So it's like in here?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's exactly what it is. It says it's line 17, and that is my line 17. Maybe if I put EBT in there, because
You do need to put something in here. You must, because that you're putting in there, you're using it here.
okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
But like I said, totally fine to just put in here an E, which was what a lot of people do, or the whole word event, whatever is best for you. It's just basically that's just an alias we're using anyway. It really is event. So a lot of people like to use the actual word event. All right. Now, if either one of you, or if anybody watching this on tape, if you still have an error, feel free to take your folder and zip it and send it to me. Now, one thing I wanted to look at is, I don't know, I didn't look at this myself. So this is the one I just created. All right, if I right mouse click and choose properties, it's pretty flippin' big already. It says it's 274 meg. All right. So what that means is, if you've got an error, you're not going to be able to just zip your folder and send it to me. You're going to have to take it, send me an email, and save it out to your GitHub repo where I can pull it down and try to take a look at it. All right. So hopefully you got something out of this. It's like I said, this is just a start. We're going to build another one tomorrow. We're going to build another one on Thursday, and probably one more next Monday. All right. And once we get to that point, then we're going to start to see if we can put this stuff together, because I'm hoping, today is day 51. What does that mean? It means we got 29 days left. But I'm hoping that by next week, sometime next week, we're going to start on our final project, which is going to be to write this e-commerce, the whole app. All right. And, that might sound like, oh, geez, that's going to be way too fast. Maybe. But I want us to have as close to 25 or 30 days as we can have. All right. So if stuff comes up that we didn't expect, we've got some time that we put aside for it. All right. So unless there's any other questions, I mean, I'll be glad to show you any more code or whatever. But if there's not, or if you come up with something later, like I said, just push it up to your GitHub repo, send me an email. If you get an error and you're not sure what it is later, take a screenshot of the error so I know where to look as far as where the problem is. All right. Any other questions for right now?
Yeah, I have just one more question for you.
Go ahead.
As far as the assignment goes, it's due on the 6th. You just want us to touch this one up with our own personal touch, right?
That is correct.
And then
I want you to do the JavaScript one that I gave you some time to work on today. And you said touch this one up. That works fine. Let's just put it this way. I want you to personalize it with your own CSS.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All right. And I'm telling you guys, I don't know how, I don't know when. We will go back to that edit button for the to do. We will get it to work. All right. You got my guarantee on that. All right. And hopefully I'll have time to look at it this weekend, and I'll rip the program apart again and rebuild it again. All right. So see you at 12:05 tomorrow. Have a good afternoon.